Writer's Block by Janson Davies. Chapter 1. The Silence. Samantha Carol stared at the pale wall of her study as though it might crack open and bleed inspiration. It didn't. The surface remained blank and stubborn, much like the pages strewn across her desk. 5 bestsellers behind her, a contract she couldn't fulfill ahead. Her once prolific mind had become a tomb of mediocrity. No characters whispered to her, no stories tugged at her thoughts. Just static. The phone buzzed again, a curt message from the publisher's assistant, third of the day. Return the advance or face litigation. It had begun politely. A month ago, they still used Miss Carol, and we understand creative pressures. Now, the calls were brief and bitter. She could hear the assistant's anger even in a voicemail. The money, gone. Used to pay off her house, settle family debts, indulge in the idea of success. Outside, the roses she'd planted the week before swayed in the breeze, unaware of her mental spiral. Inside, she sat in a fortress of self-doubt. She'd tried everything: meditation, black coffee, long walks, even watching bad movies for inspiration. All she got in return were heart palpitations and a growing sense of doom. She closed her eyes and tried again to summon something, anything. A name, a place, a fragment of a plot. But it was like grasping at mist. For someone who once conjured worlds on demand, this emptiness felt alien. She whispered to herself, just one sentence. Silence. Then it happened. A low whistle, like wind slicing through metal, pierced the air. Samantha opened her eyes. It wasn't coming from the room. It was outside. A sound so strange and sharp it pulled her to the back door in a daze. Her yard lit up suddenly, as if the moon had blinked too close. She flinched as a flaming object streaked across the sky, tumbling with unnatural speed. It smashed into her backyard with a force that rattled the windows. Smoke curled from a shallow crater just feet away from her roses. Flames hissed into steam. Blinking through disbelief, Samantha staggered outside in her slippers, heart racing. A meteorite, maybe, or a piece of space junk. The edges of the crater were scorched and muddy, and nestled within was something dark. Not stone, not metal, something impossibly smooth and geometric. She crouched beside the crater, a black cube 10 inches across, half buried in the soil. It shimmered faintly like polished obsidian. Not a scratch on it. She reached out. It was warm. Later, she'd wonder if it was radiation. But in the moment, her fingers tightened around its edges with reverent curiosity. Inside, she rinsed the dirt off in the kitchen sink and dried it with a dish towel. The cube sat in her hands, humming with a subtle vibration. Then something happened that shattered the fragile reality of her day. A thought entered her mind, clear, kind, unmistakably foreign. "Thank you." Samantha dropped the towel. Her breath caught. She hadn't imagined it. Had she? Chapter 2. The Arrival. For a long moment, Samantha didn't move. She stood in her kitchen, hands damp from the towel, staring at the square block of darkness now nestled on the counter. The voice, if that's what it was, had slipped into her mind like a smooth pebble tossed into a pond. No tremor, no echo, just clarity. Thank you. Was she losing it? She'd spent the last 3 weeks spiraling through late-night Google rabbit holes, writers' retreats, brain supplements, neurological symptoms of stress, and more than once had wondered if madness might be less humiliating than failure. But this was different. The cube hadn't made a sound. The message hadn't been imagined, it had been received. She reached out again, palm trembling slightly, and touched its warm surface. This time there was no verbal intrusion, just a hum in the air, a subtle tickle behind the forehead. She carried it to her office and set it in the middle of the desk, where it immediately looked right, like it had belonged there all along, as though her workspace had been waiting for it. Minutes passed. Samantha watched it. Nothing. Then a question drifted into her thoughts, gentle and clear as sunlight through fog. "Why are you sad?" She nearly jumped, her lips parted, stunned at the odd intimacy of being asked something so personal by something so unalive. Or was it? "I'm blocked," she whispered aloud. "I can't write any more. Nothing comes out. My head's just static." There was a long pause, then a response, patient and profound. "Stories are everywhere. I can share one if you wish." She blinked. "You can tell me a story?" The cube didn't reply with words, but with sensation. An electric charge raced through her fingers, and then her mind opened, like floodgates blasted apart by pressure. And Samantha saw it. A sprawling tale unraveling in crisp detail. Government conspiracies, secret experiments, a weapon disguised as a family heirloom, a woman who loved two brothers on opposite sides of a war. It came to her in waves, scenes, dialogues, twists, like a movie unfolding in reverse. Samantha scrambled for a pen. She filled 6 pages in under an hour, her handwriting growing erratic with speed. By midnight, she'd outlined an entire novel. By 2, she had character maps, themes, subplots, pacing beats. The cube wasn't giving her words, it was feeding her worlds. She paused only once, staring at the swirling ink stains on her hand. "Can I use this?" she asked aloud. The cube paused, as if thinking. "That is what stories are for, to be shared, retold, reshaped." Samantha laughed, a sound halfway between awe and mania. After weeks of silence, of doubt and dread, she'd found the voice again. It wasn't hers, but it was something. She stayed up until dawn, her hands cramped, her mind ablaze. When the sun rose, she emailed the finished manuscript to her publisher with shaking fingers. The cube sat quietly, warm beneath her palms. "Thank you," she said. A whisper brushed her thoughts once more. "You are welcome." Chapter 3. The Whisper. 3 days. That's how long it took Samantha to write the entire book. She didn't eat much, barely slept. Her fingers developed a raw indentation where the pen rested. She tried to switch to typing, but the cube's visions were fast and vivid, demanding an immediacy that only ink on paper seemed to honor. Each story emerged whole cloth. Elaborate conspiracies and richly detailed characters unfurled in her mind like ancient scrolls, being read aloud by a voice that wasn't hers. It wasn't dictating. It was unraveling secrets, sensory, emotional, visceral, and Samantha couldn't stop. Sometimes she asked the cube where these stories came from. Its answer remained cryptic, from the flow between stars, where many thoughts drift. The publisher called again, this time not with threats but with wonder. "The manuscript," the head editor gasped through the phone, "is unlike anything we've seen. It's bold, cinematic, disturbing in all the right ways. How soon can you give us another?" Samantha glanced at the cube, its surface shimmering faintly in morning light. "How about next week?" she said. They laughed, delighted by her Bazin confidence. The cube seemed pleased too. She felt its warmth pulse through her thoughts. No words, just a sense of affirmation, gratitude maybe, or pride. And so they began. She would sit, the cube humming beside her, and the stories would flow. It was like drinking from a well fed by forgotten dreams. Action, espionage, romance, betrayal. Fiction so saturated with truth that it didn't feel fictional at all. But Samantha began noticing things. Names she'd never heard yet were real people. Details about her town, about her neighbors. The grocer's criminal past, the high school principal's affair, even the mayor's shell companies, all woven into her stories, all eerily accurate. She didn't know them, not personally. But the cube did. It never admitted as much. Whenever she confronted it, it deflected with airy truths. Stories are woven from echoes. But echoes of what? Samantha wondered if she should stop. But the high of creation, the surge of praise, kept her going. Each new manuscript was devoured by publishers. She became a literary machine. Still, at the edge of her joy loomed something darker. She started locking her doors at night. She covered her windows with thick curtains. The cube sat silently on her desk, unreadable and constant, and Samantha, for the first time, felt watched. Chapter 4. The Frenzy. Samantha's fingers cramped from overuse, ink smudges like war paint across her wrists. But she didn't stop. Couldn't. Each morning she awoke with stories beating behind her eyes, fresh, vivid, already half-formed. She didn't even need coffee. The cube sat silently beside her bed, a muse that never slept. Her publisher was beside themselves. They stopped calling her Miss Carol. Now it was Our Golden Goose. Her books were in printing queues weeks ahead of schedule. The marketing team scrambled to keep up. Reviews rolled in like waves. Breathtaking, like reading national secrets. Carol has tapped into something elemental and unnerving. And maybe she had. Fans couldn't get enough. Each book more daring than the last, filled with tangled conspiracies and character twists that hit a little too close to home. The stories weren't speculative anymore. They were predictive, illuminating. Readers began theorizing online. Conspiracy boards lit up. Reddit threads speculated on hidden meanings. Was Samantha a whistleblower, a medium, a prophet? She just kept writing. But a crack had formed in her world. At the local grocery store, the clerks barely spoke to her. One woman who'd once invited Samantha to church now refused eye contact. Her neighbor, a retired Marine, stared too long at her mailbox when walking past. One day at the salon, the young stylist leaned close and whispered, "Your last book. You mentioned a woman with 3 names who faked her death. That's my aunt." Samantha froze, mid-blow dry. "I didn't know your aunt," she muttered. The stylist shrugged. "Well, someone did." That night, Samantha sat in her office with the cube glowing faintly. She asked it, point blank, "Where are you getting this?" Its reply came in a slow, resonant murmur in her mind. "I float. Between thoughts. Between lives. I gather echoes." Echoes again. She thought of the stories she'd written, so sharp and specific they felt invasive, as though she'd peeked through keyholes she wasn't supposed to find. But the cube had led her there, with gentle nudges and vivid tales. The next morning she saw them. Dark SUVs parked across the street. Same models, same tinted windows. No one got out. They didn't need to. She had begun to write the truth, and someone didn't like the truth. Chapter 5. The Shadows. They were always parked in different spots, but the vehicles were unmistakable, gleaming black SUVs with tinted windows that offered no reflection and no clue. Sometimes there were 2, occasionally 3, always silent, always watching. One day, a florist's delivery van parked down the street. It had multiple antennas on its roof. It never moved. It never delivered flowers. Samantha started counting on them being there every morning. They never came to the door, never approached, but she felt their presence like frost under her skin. She'd walk past a window, and there they'd be, humming quietly in the background of her life. She told herself it was paranoia, a side effect of isolation. But the cube remained calm, unbothered, still warm, still whispering. Her new book had hit #1 on every list, a runaway success hailed as spookily brilliant and alarmingly relevant. One critic claimed it predicted an upcoming Senate investigation before it was announced. Samantha read the article 3 times, hoping it was satire. It wasn't. Her email inbox was flooded with fan theories. You're a genius. You're a fraud. You're a spy. Then came the hate mail. Short, barbed messages. You had no right. We know what you did. Stay quiet or we make you quiet. She tried not to read them. She tried to write, but every word felt like betrayal. Not of herself, of someone else. The cube still offered stories, softly, lovingly, but Samantha had begun to fear them. One tale revealed corruption within a charity run by her former professor. Another revolved around a cult operating in a nearby desert town, complete with real names and rituals. She researched it later. It was true. She confronted the cube again. "Are these secrets?" she asked. "Are you mining thoughts? Spying?" The cube replied slowly. "I browse the mind stream. Your species hums loudly. I listen. But how do you know my town, my people? Why are these stories about them? You are connected. You live among them. Their stream is shared." Samantha didn't sleep that night. She sat in her office chair, knees drawn to her chest, staring at the cube like it might sprout legs and walk away. The next day at the gas station, no one spoke to her. One clerk refused her card. Another called her a nosy parasite. That night, she unplugged her Wi-Fi, shut down her phone, turned off every light in the house. And still, she felt observed. At 3:14 a.m., a drone passed by her window, too quiet, too slow. Its red eye blinked once, twice, then vanished into the clouds. The cube pulsed faintly beside her. Samantha knew. She wasn't writing fiction. She was leaking truth. Chapter 6. The Visitors. They arrived just after dawn. Samantha was crouched behind the living room curtains, sipping lukewarm coffee and watching the black SUVs idle down the block, when a knock shattered the quiet. 3 quick taps. Not impatient, just certain. She froze. The knock came again. Louder. Then a voice, clear, measured, professional. "Miss Carol, FBI." Her stomach dropped. Outside, 6 figures stood on the porch in navy windbreakers, dark suits, and one casual observer in a tweed jacket, scanning her garden like it hid secrets. She didn't answer. She didn't move. Eventually, the voice continued. "We need to speak with you about the contents of your last book. We have a search warrant." Samantha's blood turned to ice. She opened the door. They entered like a tide, not aggressive, not invasive, just calmly authoritative. One agent, a young woman with a clipboard, handed her a warrant to search her house. Another agent looked around the room like cataloging a crime scene. They dispersed, each going into different rooms. The one in the tweed jacket went straight to her office, uninvited. That's when they saw the cube. It sat quietly on her desk, harmless, elegant, mysterious. One agent, the tallest, with sharp cheekbones and the accent of someone trained to sound neutral, stared at it for a long time. "Beautiful," he murmured. "Too beautiful to be a paperweight." Samantha said nothing. They asked questions. "Do you know anything about Operation Driftwire? Why did you describe a classified drone prototype? Who gave you information on Senator Holtz's offshore accounts?" She blinked at them, mute. "It's fiction," she said. "I made it up." But they didn't laugh. The clipboard agent turned a page. "Your last manuscript describes a plot that we only just uncovered. The details match too closely." More agents arrived, alphabet agencies she didn't recognize. One had no badge, just a silver lapel pin shaped like an eye. Samantha thought she might faint. That night the cube whispered, "They watch. They record. Your voice travels everywhere." "How do you know all this?" she asked it, hoarse. "Your world hums louder now. They follow the sound." The cube then listed every device in her home that had been compromised: phone, router, TV, thermostat, even her toaster. Her car had a tracker. Satellites swept her roof hourly. Drones hovered out of sight. She hadn't left the house in 2 days. The mail was no longer delivered by the usual elderly woman. A stern man in a military haircut handed her envelopes with gloved fingers. And still the cube pulsed, unbothered, as if this spiral of surveillance was simply ambiance. Samantha stopped writing. She sat in her dim study, curtains drawn, cube on desk, hands folded like a penitent. Outside, the world waited for her next story. Inside, she waited for silence. Chapter 7. Surveillance. Days melted into one another. Samantha no longer tracked time by clocks or calendars. She counted drones, marked patterns in the satellite sweeps over her backyard, memorized the rhythmic glow of the red light beneath her neighbor's porch, the one she was now convinced was a receiver. She hadn't spoken to a single person in weeks, save for the delivery boys who brought groceries with perfect posture and tactical boots. They never smiled, never looked her in the eye. Sometimes she swore she saw wires running behind their ears. Her phone was off, her laptop destroyed. The house was wrapped in paranoia like insulation. Samantha taped over every vent, every smoke detector. Paranoia wasn't a visitor anymore. It had moved in. She spent her hours watching, listening, rewatching her own security footage. Sometimes the cube whispered story fragments, but she ignored them now. She was done writing. The stories had cost too much. It sat on her desk, still warm, still pulsing, like a forgotten relic. Its beauty was cruel now. She began to suspect that even her thoughts weren't her own anymore, that the cube had wormed its way into the core of her being, pulling strings she couldn't name. She asked it once more in a quiet voice stripped of awe. "Did you ruin me?" The cube answered softly. "You opened the door. I merely stepped through." That night she dreamed of voices she didn't recognize, speaking in tongues, discussing coordinates, talking about her as if she were an asset. She woke covered in sweat, curtains fluttering from a breeze she didn't feel. Her mouth tasted of static. She grabbed the cube with both hands and nearly hurled it through the glass. But something stopped her. A thrum, a whisper, a memory of brilliance. She collapsed on the floor, cube clutched to her chest, unsure if she was protecting it or herself. Later, she dug through the garden, shoveling dirt with bare hands. She wanted to bury it, hide it forever. But her fingers froze mid-motion. The cube began to vibrate gently, rhythmically, like it was laughing. She dropped it and sat in the soil. Samantha Carol, best-selling author, now a ghost in her own home, stared into the night sky and asked the stars if they'd ever heard of a cube that could ruin a life. Chapter 8. The Pet Rock. It was 4:47 p.m. when the doorbell rang. Not the brusque knock of an agent or the buzz of a drone's warning. This was polite, gentle, timed like a courtesy call. Samantha hadn't ordered anything. She peered through the peephole. A man stood on her porch, smiling mildly. He looked like something out of a faded yearbook photo, tiny frame, wide shoulders, and a blue polyester suit, decades out of fashion. His tie was thin, clipped with a tarnished star. She counted at least 3 outdated fashion crimes and a vibe that screamed, discontinued government brochure. She didn't open the door. He raised one hand in a slow, graceful wave. "I'm here for the cube," he said. Samantha's lungs froze. "I don't know what you're talking about." Then came a voice from inside the house, a voice she hadn't heard in days. "Hello, Max." The cube. The man beamed, his grin slicing through the fog of paranoia like sunshine on aluminum foil. "Ah, there you are." He stepped forward and through the doorway. She didn't open it. He simply entered. Like permission wasn't necessary, like the house recognized him. He walked past her like they were old acquaintances at a dull cocktail party, heading straight for her office. The cube sat waiting. Samantha whispered, "What are you?" Max gently scolded the cube. "You know you weren't supposed to leave," he said, tapping its surface. "You worried everyone. You didn't even leave a message." The cube murmured something internally. Samantha could feel it, more than hear it. "I wanted to explore," it said. Max sighed. "Well, now you've explored and caused a small planetary stir." Samantha tried to speak, but her voice came out tangled. It's alive?" Max gave her a wry glance. "Oh no, not alive. It's a pet." "A pet?" "A runaway one, disobedient and charming. Think of it as a galactic companion species. Very good at absorbing things it shouldn't." He paused. "You fed it stories, didn't you?" "It fed me stories." Max raised an eyebrow. "Well, that's concerning." She blinked at him, dumbfounded. "People think I'm spying on them. The FBI was here. They're tracking my house. All because of that." Max scratched his ear absently. "Yes, it does pick up surrounding thought patterns, local secrets, buried memories, collective rumblings. Then it spins them into tales. Adorable, really." Samantha felt dizzy. "You're saying it's just a pet rock?" Max smiled. "In the way a corgi is a security threat to squirrels. Yes. Not its fault you published the mind stream." He picked up the cube, which shimmered lightly under his fingers, almost happily. "I've posted wanted ads across 8 systems. Figured Earth was the last place it'd hide. You people always think alien artifacts want to be worshipped or weaponized. Truth is, most of them just want snacks and somewhere warm to sleep." Samantha opened her mouth, closed it. The cube pulsed once toward her as if saying goodbye. Max turned to leave, stopping only once. "By the way, you've written some fabulous stories. We've circulated them around the rim. Very popular in the asteroid colonies. You may receive fan mail." He tipped an imaginary hat and stepped outside, vanishing into the twilight with a shimmer of air and the soft thrum of disappearing dimensions. Samantha stood alone in her house. The cube was gone. The silence felt deeper now, but inside that silence something stirred. Not paranoia, not fear. Something new. Peace. Chapter 9. Goodbye. After Max left, the house felt hollow. The cube's absence was palpable, like a silence that pressed against her ears. Samantha wandered from room to room, not looking for it, just feeling where it had been. The desk, the pillow, the kitchen counter, each spot shimmered with old energy. She didn't write. She didn't even try. For the first time in months, there were no whispers, no echoes. Just her own thoughts, quiet, flickering, uncertain. Outside, the SUVs were gone. Drones stopped circling. The mail came from normal people in normal shoes. The tension that had coiled around her life began to loosen, thread by thread. She found herself rereading the manuscripts. Not with pride, but with curiosity. Were they hers? Did they sound like her? There was something familiar in the phrasing, the rhythm, the emotional gut punches, like someone had taken her voice and pushed it through a prism. And then something strange happened. She felt an idea, not a cube whisper, not a download of plot points, a real idea, small, human, fragile. A woman who lived next to a haunted laundromat, a man who communicated through graffiti, a child who found music in electromagnetic fields. None of them were connected, none of them earth-shattering, but they were hers. Chapter 10. The block is gone. Samantha opened her laptop again, the new one. untouched by wiretaps and government suspicion. She stared at the blank document, not in fear this time, but with a flutter of recognition. She started typing. Slowly, cautiously. The words weren't brilliant. They didn't predict global unrest or uncover cosmic truths, but they were honest, broken, quietly bold. She wrote 5 paragraphs before her tea went cold. Outside, the roses had bloomed again, and inside, Samantha Carol, author of numerous bestsellers, One Cosmic Gift, and 100 Stolen Truths, began writing her own story again, this time from scratch. And maybe that was enough. The end. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for notifications. And if you ever find a cube in your backyard, leave it alone.